Kim, turn your microphone on.
We'll call the meeting to order of the 2019, June 20th, 2019 special meeting. First order of business. Just to let everyone know that this meeting is being televised and recorded. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, items to be added to the agenda by commission members or staff. Does anyone have anything that's not on the agenda tonight? Nothing from the county commission?
No, we have nothing to add.
Okay. Invitations for citizens to schedule time on the commission agenda for an item not listed. Time limited to 5 minutes per person to address the board. Is anyone in the audience that would like to visit with the board about something that is not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we move on. Disclosure of conflicts of interest. Does there anyone have a conflict of interest with anything that's on the agenda tonight?
I do.
Mr. McHugh?
With Mr. Glazier.
Okay, with Mr. Glazier. Very good. Thank you. Then we have a motion for the approval of the agenda as read. Motion by Ford.
Second.
Second by Erickson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Need to read the Board of Adjustment statement. The Board of Adjustment is a 9-member board which has the power to hear requests for variances, conditional uses, appeals, and special exceptions. The concurring vote of 2/3 of the attending members is necessary for approval of any action by the board. A 9-member board requires 6 votes, and a 6-member board requires 6 votes. In accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, we require a motion to approve a request before the request can be debated. As a matter of policy, all motions are made in the positive. The board, under specific powers granted by the state, shall authorize variances from zoning requirements where special conditions existing on the land will result in unnecessary hardship for the applicant. Financial disadvantage to the property owner shall not constitute proof of unnecessary hardship. And with that, we move on to agenda item number 6, 2019 variance 004. William L. Hanson has made an application 2019 variance 004 to the Brookings County Board of Adjustment for a variance. Article 4, District Requirements. Chapter 4.03, LP Lake Park District. Section 4.03.03, Density, Area, and Yard Regulation. Minimum lakefront. The property described as Lot 3 in Marvin Wade subdivision in government lots 1, 2, and 3 in the northeast 1/4 of Section 6, Township 112 North, Range 52 West, which is in Laketon Township, located at 194 South Lake Drive, Arlington, South Dakota, 57212. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion by McHugh, and is there a second?
Second.
Second by Elankowicz. Richard?
Yes, 2019 variance 004. William Hanson has applied for variance to replace the existing foundation as it is in need of repair with a basement on an existing house 44 feet from the highest known watermark on Lake Poncet, a variance of 31 feet. The lake park setbacks are 75 feet from the highest known watermark and 8 feet from the side. The house and the deck will remain the same distance from the lake as they currently are now. They will move the basement a few feet to the west so they meet the 8-foot side setback on the east side. The location of the septic system and the utility lines and the sanitary sewer district prevent them from moving the house farther back from the lake. The house and the deck will be in line with the neighboring properties on either side of his, and the current cabin was built in 1963. The Marvin Wade subdivision was platted in 1949 prior to the current zoning requirements. And the applicant will also be doing a shoreline modification at this time to stabilize the lake shore and has submitted plans to the South Dakota Department of Game Fish and Parks for consideration. And a portion of the parcel is in the floodplain, and they'll have to complete a floodplain development permit and follow the FEMA standards for that. And it has been removed from the floodplain. It does sit up on a hill up 30 feet out of the water, but that's just one of the requirements when it's marked the floodplain. The Brookings County Comprehensive Plan for future development states, and it's likely that the established development areas of Lake Campbell, Lake Hendricks, Lake Tetonkaha, and Lake Ponset will experience continued development in varying degrees, while non-lakefront growth potential exists for all able lakes. Significant lakefront area is appropriately zoned and subdivided in some cases, adjacent to Lake Tetonkaha, Lake Hendricks, and Lake Campbell. Public notices were sent to the adjoining landowners and the Laketon Township chairman and clerk. Public notices were published on June 11th and June 18th in the Brookings Register, and on June 13th and 20th in the Arlington Sun. And we have received no comment from adjoining landowners or the township in regards to this variance request. Variance application. Just shows the outside elevation here. Here's the lake shore coming back. Here's the stabilization of his wall. Here's his supporting post, the deck, house existing location. It's 44 feet from here to out is the distance. Supporting post comes out 11 feet from the house. A little bigger if you'd like to. 44 feet would be measured from this line right here out to the lake shore, the highest known watermark. Some elevations, what the house looks like from the lake side. There's the stabilization, the shoreline modification. Side view, steps going down. Retaining walls were there. There's the basement and the deck here. Beacon map of the property. The red area marks the floodplain. If you can see here, the portion of the house is out of the floodplain, so that area is not colored, meaning it's been removed by FEMA. But he will now need to do an update on that, being they're lowering the basement, lowering that lower level to just send it in to update his application to keep it out of the floodplain area. There's some photos looking at it from the road. Going back, this is, back it up so y'all can see. Looking at it from the road, this is where the wheel is right here. That's the east property line, right, coming down right here. See, the house is about 4 feet right now is where the existing house was. So they're going to move everything to the west. There's adequate room on the west to slide that over. You can see right here, this would be the 8-foot mark right on the edge of that deck right here. That's where the new 8-foot side setback would be. This is the 44 feet from the high water mark, going back onto the existing post right here, looking towards the west or northwest, I guess, or southwest. And this is just looking back towards the east from the neighboring property. The wheel's at 44 feet again here. right here is the 8 foot. From here over to that stump is 8 feet from the west property line, so that's the approximate location where the west side of the house will be located now. From here to here is the difference. It's about a horse apiece on either side. This is just looking back towards the road from the lake side. The existing septic tank and lines are underneath the house right here. And this is looking back from the lake shore looking up. It's about a 30-foot elevation from the water to the top of the ground up there. You can see the steps and the elevation, see how it's crumbling away, and they're gonna fix that up and prevent that from continuing eroding into the lake. So, and they do have permission or approval from Game Fish and Parks to do their shoreline modifications. So, and that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Mr. Hanson, would you please come forward and identify yourself and tell us anything that Richard left out or anything you want to add?
I go by Bill, but my name's William Mel Hanson.
Okay.
I think Richard hit pretty much everything. The shoreline, as you saw, is starting to fall in, and so that's the biggest thing that we wanted to fix. And so as doing that, just add some space to the cabin. I'd like to put a basement underneath it so we had a little more space, and I'd like to leave it kind of where it is. Besides the septic and all of that, that would have to be done. If we would have to set it back, as you can see that our neighboring house is right up there, and it would kind of cut our view of the lake, so we'd like to just be up, and basically when we're done, we'd be right even with that house there, so.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? So what you're saying is if you leave the house where it is, it doesn't change the distance back from the lake, and you're pretty much about the same as all your neighbors in the area?
We would be exactly with that particular neighbor, and then the house next to him is kind of the same. Now, the cabin on the other side of me was tore down. They sold that lot last year, that had an auction and stuff, so they tore that cabin down. So there's really nothing on there right now on that one. But there's a lot of trees in the shoreline and whatnot, and if we would have to move back, our view of the lake would become pretty tough because the other house would be up, and then the trees and stuff would block on the west side. I don't know if he's going to take those out of there or not. There's talk that he's going to, but
Kind of sits out on a little point right here. This is looking towards the west, so it would be, the view would not be obstructed that way. And going to the east, there's a lot of trees right in here, and with this cabin being gone, it's fully treed, a tree line right in this area, all the way along there. So the site coming from the east wouldn't be affected really from the adjoining neighbors.
Okay. Questions from the board?
What happens if you go to the full 45 feet? What happens then?
Farther back, you mean, Daryl?
Right.
Yeah, they'd have to move their septic system and tank
Yes.
back in here, and the utilities are located in that area also.
Is it, I guess, excuse me, a foot or two or three, is that what you're kind of thinking about, Daryl?
Right.
Yeah, a foot or two or three farther back, is that possible, or is that?
well, we were under the understanding that it's 75 feet,
Right.
and we're 44, Is that, Richard, is that correct? 44?
Correct, yep.
So we'd have to go back another 31 feet?
I misunderstood Darrell's question. Darrell was just asking if you can move it back a foot or two, like to 45 feet or 46 feet.
Oh,
3 or 4 feet.
I think we have about 5 feet
yeah.
to where we wouldn't want to get into the septic tank. We could move it 5 feet, that's about it.
But I think this board is very sensitive on trying to maintain the 75 feet, but I don't think we're going to make you try and push that back 75. I'm not sure, that's just my personal opinion at this point.
Okay.
But if you could move it back a few more feet, at least there's a little bit of a compromise there, and we would feel a little bit
don't
more comfortable doing that.
Like 2 or 3 feet isn't gonna, I don't think make a difference, no. If that would be better.
Sure.
How old is the house next to it?
How old?
Yeah.
I think he said it was 07?
I was going to say 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
Was there a variance done for that?
I don't know, I didn't look at that. We'll see if I can pull it up here.
I think it's 196.
That house was built in '08, or '05, excuse me. Prior to the flood development, prior to the floodplain change. The floodplain changed in '08. So,
But they still would have had to have gotten a variance for the high water mark, right?
like I said, I didn't look into it. Without getting the file and researching into it, I can't answer that.
So, excuse me, again, just looking there a little bit, if we could get that moved back a few feet, and I think that's up to the board to kind of determine what you'd like to see for feet
Sure.
back. Any questions or comments on what do you see there? What do you think?
5 feet is possible, I say try it. If there is problems with the septic, and I understand that it can't be moved, I mean, maybe just a compromise of 3.
Kim, turn your microphone on.
If 5 feet is possible, but if the utilities, obviously, they're not going to be moving, that's understandable. I'd be okay with 3. Personal thoughts, whatever the board thinks as well.
Well, the other thing is, the lot on the other side is vacant, nothing there.
Well, they just poured a cement slab to put a
Camper.
a camper on, fifth wheel camper. They just did that like last week.
Do they have the same, I guess, what does the shoreline do? Or does it have the same elevation drop, or does it come down gradual? I mean,
They have more of a gradual on part of their property, and then further to the east is kind of there's like a township or county road that used to go in there. And when you go, if you follow that in, it's just a straight drop off. But then as you move over more to the west, it's more gradual. And then you kind of get like to our property, and then we have the straight drop off again. And then Mark's property next to us is gradual, but he did some work when they built their house to make it,
because I guess what I'm wondering on is if the lot next to you would ever choose to build a permanent structure also, what we're gonna have to do to keep the houses in line. you know, we don't want to make him go back 5 feet and then have the next one be farther ahead with what the shoreline allows.
And that's a good point. We want to make sure to maintain the character, but still, if we can compromise and move back a little
I
ways.
think 3. I don't see a problem if you'd like us to move it back 3. I mean, we're still gonna be up there far enough that we'll have a nice view of the lake, so yeah.
Okay.
I would agree to that if that's what you'd like, yeah.
Comments from the board on, let's use 3 feet. Just a consensus is 3 feet. Are you comfortable with that?
I don't have a problem either way, I guess.
Pardon?
I don't have a problem either way, 3 feet or where they want to put it.
Okay.
I
Kim?
agree, I agree with Randy. I mean, what's 3 feet?
Yeah,
You know, he's high enough, he's never gonna flood.
well, that's true. That's true.
So,
That's true.
I'd be more to keep it in line than pushing it 3 feet or 5 feet.
Kim? Comment?
I guess as far back as we can is kind of my thoughts, but I understand that too. I mean, you do something for one person, we obviously want to keep the consensus, so maybe just go around and ask people's thoughts.
My thought
Majority.
is if you get it back away from the lake a little bit farther, it'll be a lot easier to stabilize your shoreline, and it won't be near as steep between your
True.
house and the shoreline.
That's true too.
It's gonna be a 3-foot drop in 30-some, 20-some feet. It'd be like a 3-foot drop from the walkout to the top of the retaining wall in 20-some feet.
How tall is the retaining wall?
The 8 foot.
8.
Is that gonna stay there?
Should.
The Game Fish and Parks looked at it and okayed it.
Well, you should be commended for trying to stabilize that wall of dirt, keep it from going into the lake. That's
Thank you.
That's important
Well,
to
that
do
was
that.
kind of our biggest thing, because it's fallen in, you know, every year we lose more.
Yeah. And
Well, so the elevation, it looks like, is 1,675.9, and the bottom of the retaining wall is 1,667.9. So whatever that difference is, that's the height. Which, that's more equity preserver than anything, so that's a thought, but.
Well, I like the idea you're trying to adjust the house or the side for both sides to meet the setbacks there. And any more comments or questions from the board at this time? If not, we'll open it up to the public for anyone want to speak for this variance. Seeing none, we'll close the public portion, come back to the board. Further questions or comments from the board on this variance? And tentatively, we'd like to see approximately 3 feet. Let's just use the word approximately 3 feet back. And probably we still would like to see you maintain the character. I don't want to see you, like Mr. Ford and Mr. Jensen said, we don't want to see you farther back than you should be, so. Further comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, Richard, we'll go through the findings.
Application for variance having been filed with the Brookings County Zoning Commission, acting as the Brookings County Board of Adjustment, a copy of the application be attached to. Such application be filed by William L. Hanson regarding the following real property, Lot 3, Marvin Wade subdivision in the northeast 1/4 of Section 6, Township 112 North, Range 52 West, Laketon Township. After due notice of public hearing having been held on the application on this 20th day of June 2019. Number 1, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment hereby finding that the strict application of the Brookings County zoning ordinance would produce undue hardship, that such hardship is not shared generally by other properties in the same district or the same vicinity, and the authorization of the variance would not be such detrimental to adjacent properties, and the character of the district will not be changed by granting of the variance. And granting of such variance is based upon reasonable and demonstrable exceptional hardships as distinguished from variations for the purpose of convenience, profit, and caprice. Number 2, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further finding that the condition or situation of the property concerned or the intended use of the property is not so general or recurring in nature as to make reasonable, practicable the formulation of a general regulation to be adopted by the amendment to the zoning ordinance. Number 3, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further finding that the written application of the petitioner demonstrates that special conditions and circumstances exist which shall peculiar to the land, structure, or buildings in the same district, that literal interpretations of the provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance would deprive the applicant rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of the ordinance, that the special conditions or circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, and granting of the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance in other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. The Brookings County Board of Adjustment further finding that the reasons set forth in the application justify the granting of the variance and that the variance is a minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure, and that granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and the intent of the Brookings County zoning ordinance and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. The Brookings County Board of Adjustment further determines and conditions this variance upon the following special conditions or safeguards. A, Marvin Way subdivision was platted in 1949, Lot 3, 40 feet by 180 feet, 1 feet. B, the location of the existing cabin was built in 1963. C, Lot 3 was platted before current zoning requirements. D, the location of the existing garage, septic system, water, telephone, and utility lines. The Brookings County Board of Adjustment, by at least 2/3 vote of its full membership, hereby grants the petitioner a variance for the above described property as follows. Place the existing cabin on a new basement foundation with a 12-foot deck to be located the same distance from the lake, 44 feet from the highest on watermark, and must comply with FEMA floodplain construction standards. Want me to change that to 47?
Yeah, let's use 47.
This variance is specifically conditioned upon initial and continued compliance with all the conditions and safeguard in 5 above, and upon compliance with all applicable provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. If approved, the Brookings County zoning director is authorized to issue any required building permits for construction consistent for the terms of this variance. This variance is not used within 3 years of the date granted, it shall be invalid, dated this 20th day of June 2019.
We need to make a note on this. This variance is approved. It's for one of the reasons it's approved is due to the elevation of the lot.
$16.79, $16.57, 18 feet,
22.
22.
Are there any other additions or corrections to the findings? Anything we need to add or? Go through the roll call.
Erickson,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Yelankowicz,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Kleinjohn,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Spence,
Aye.
Jensen,
Yes.
and Rochelle.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 7, 2019 conditional use 006. Michael G. Glazier has made an application 2019 conditional use 006 to the Brookings County Board of Adjustment for a conditional use. Article 11, Section 1101, A, Agricultural District, conditional use permit number 20, home extended business. Property described as the south half of the southeast 1/4 of Section 17, Township 112 North, Range 47 West, which is Lake Hendricks Township, located at 48,578 199th Street, Hendricks, Minnesota, 56136. With that, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Motion by Lankwitz, second by Erickson, and Mr. McHugh excused himself. We do not have an alternate, so that chair will sit empty. Richard?
Yes. Yes, 2019 CU 006. Michael G. Glazier has applied for a conditional use permit number 20 for a home extended business for a temporary seasonal campground for construction workers. He's initially planning on 14 hookups. When this report was made, I believe he's decreased that down to 12 as his initial size here. He'll still have space for additional 10 hookups if they're needed for a total of 24 spaces. He'll be installing RV, electrical, plumbing, and sewer hookups to service the individual camping pads. And there is rural water on site that will be used for the campsite. And he has a large existing septic system for his shop that he will be used for the septic service for the camping pads. And he will set up a schedule with a septic pumper or maintenance company to pump the tank as often as necessary due to the increased use. And the septic system does meet the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources standards for a septic system for this, but if he adds the additional 10 campers or 12 campers, he would need to install an additional tank for that purpose. And Department of Health requirements would require a fire extinguisher to be available on the outside of the grounds, regular dumpster service, and outside rodent and pest control. The site is located on 199th Street, which is Brookings County Blacktop Road number 44. They will use existing driveway to enter and exit the property with no site restrictions in either direction. I did contact the Brookings County Highway Superintendent, Brian Gustad, and he has no objections to the variance or the conditional use request. And the campsite would be for construction workers only. There'd be no recreational weekend camping there allowed. Like I said, he'll have a dumpster on site for the trash or garbage to be picked up regularly. Mr. Glazier lives on the site, and he'll use his basement in case of inclement weather should occur for that. And once the construction is done in the area and the demand is no longer there, he will remove the infrastructure and return the area back to the grass lawn that he had. Letters were sent to the adjoining landowners, Lake Hendricks Township Chairman and Clerk, and the Brookings County Highway Department. And public notices were published in the Brookings Register on June 11th and the 18th, and the Hendricks Pioneer on June 12th and 19th. Here's his conditional use application. His business plan, site plan. It would only be there from during the working months, spring until frost freezes up. After the winter time, there'd be no campers there. Parking would be between and in front of the campers there. Initially at 14, and believe he moved that down to 12 spots to give him a little more room, but he still would have capacity for 24 on the lot. Rural electric and rural water is there. Septic system to be pumped regularly. Quiet time is 10 p.m. and no outside pets would be allowed there. This is 199th. This is his building site. This is where his proposed camping pads would be. If that's demand is good and it's there, he'd also go down along the side, I believe, and back in here would be the additional spaces that he would be providing where they would be located. Just a little larger view of the Ramlow Shores is right down here. The development on Lake Hendricks is about, a mile down the road. Mile right down the road off on the south-hand side right over here. Just looking at the end driveway, looking to the east, down 199th Street. Nice clear view. This is looking towards the west, unobstructed view that way. This is looking at east of the driveway. This is the setback would be 150 feet from the center of the road. This is where that setback would be, right at the edge of them trailers. This is the area he was proposing to park the campers. This is just looking the other direction down towards the road, grassy area that would be left. This is looking back in towards his building site. This grassy area right here in front of the machine shed is where he would plan to park the 2 rows of campers. I've not heard any comments from the neighbors or adjoining landowners on this. Just comment was received from the County Highway Superintendent, Brian Gusted. And that's all that I have.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Mr. Gleiser, you can come forward and add anything to your conditional use request.
I don't really have anything to add. Richard pretty well summed it up. It is only for construction workers, and when the construction is done, it'll be put back to as you see it in the photos. So that's really about it. There's just a need for it, so we thought we would try to do what was needed.
Okay. So this is a short-term, 1 year?
No, it's there's actually wind tower projects in the area for 7 years. I understand this is a 5-year permit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd have to look and see. I either put it 5 or 3. I don't recall which I put in the findings of facts, but yeah,
Okay.
It's a temporary permit, not permanent.
Either way, if my wife and I decide to continue at the end of the permit, I understand we just have to reapply for another permit.
Yeah, that's
So
correct.
we don't know if we will. We're new to this too.
So is this, just to clarify, is this going to be for 3 years, 1 year, or 5 years?
Either 3 years, I put in the findings 3 years for right now, but it's whatever the board would,
Oh, okay.
1 year is probably not practicable for the infrastructure and everything that's there, but if you want 1 year, that would be fine. It was just
Okay.
temporary, it's not permanent, so at the end of that time, and demand is still there, he would have to come in and reapply for it, for that to be renewed.
Okay, so what are we looking at? 3 years then? Looks like it, 3 years.
3 year. We're saying 3 year?
3 years, yes. Questions or comments from the board on this
Is
conditional use?
is this 155 or 1 70, 77? Is that a hard top?
The street
Yeah,
is 199th.
199?
It is blacktop, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then where your pads are gonna be, is that gonna stay grass or is that gonna be gravel?
The pads will be gravel,
That'll be gravel, okay. Is that got a slope to it or is it flat?
pretty flat.
So you could end up with some mud issues if the gravel's not thick enough. But that's your deal to can work with that.
We'll put a lot of gravel in there.
So with the 14 spots, and then if I remember correctly, if you were to add another 10, that would go where? So like around the house or shed, or what is
Well,
that?
those are sheds. Those are all sheds. The house is like straight up the main driveway on the left.
Okay,
Right,
yep.
That's the house. The other buildings are sheds, and there's room. I calculated out beside that shed, the first shed, there's room for three spots there. And then at the end of that back shed, I was thinking 6 to 8 spots, easy enough. Between the grain bins are going to be pulled out this summer, so they'll be
Okay.
gone. Those two, you see the 2 round circles there? Those grain bins are being pulled out. So from there over to the shed, there'll be plenty of room for more additional spots.
My other question, do you own the land around this? by
Yes, I do.
chance? You do, okay. And you don't plan on selling it anytime
If
soon?
I did, I would have sold it about 6 years ago.
Yep, all right. I guess personal opinion, I mean, if we were to expand those other ones, that's where I'm starting to get a little hesitant. So what was that? Water hookups are only for, well, 12 spots. It says 14, but is that how it went? Capacity for 24 if needed, water. Yeah. Not saying it can't be done, but just, you know, I guess I'd like to hear the rest of the board's thoughts on that as well.
My thoughts are is if we do the 12 now and he wants to expand to the 24, he would have to apply for a separate conditional use permit for that.
And that's kind of what I was thinking too.
Do it piece by piece.
Sure. And this is common. We just kind of see how it goes. And if everything keeps going, there's no problem.
Could I request that from 12 to 15 now? The reason is the septic that's there now will accommodate 15.
Okay.
And the hookups for the septic have already, not that that's an issue, but they are in for the other 3 spots along the road there. I do not have the electric and the water plumbed in yet, but when we're ditching it, we did that. So that septic will accommodate 15, so if 15 is a doable number, I'd be fine with that. And then if we decided to add more, I'd be fine with coming back in and going through the motions again.
That appears to be a reasonable request. I see heads all nodding up and down, so that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, you know, you're going to be living there, so you're going to be like the policeman there to keep an eye
Yeah.
on things?
Police, referee, bouncer.
Okay. And
I'll just, little history on me. I've in the past, I'm semi-retired. I still farm. We farm 1,500 acres here with my brother-in-law, and I have 100 cattle still in Oklahoma. I go back and forth somewhat. My son-in-law takes care of most of that. But I ran 50 trucks nationwide over the road for 30 years, so I can usually deal with people pretty good. So don't usually have too much troubles.
Well, when I and I don't know what's going to happen there, but construction workers, and sometimes after lots of hours, they'd like to relax, and maybe they like to have some alcohol to help relax. And I would hate to see things get out of hand because you're a long ways from local police department or sheriff. So if you're going to be on there, keep an eye on things. I'm pretty comfortable with that. So
Yeah, and I'll be there. And their safety man told me that, and I'm sure this is true, that they all go through federal background investigations. And if there's one complaint from anyone on Main Street on these guys, they're automatically fired. They do not even get a chance to give their side of the story. If there's a complaint, they're done. These are all union workers, and I haven't met them all. I've met one guy, and besides the safety guy, and very nice guy. So I think we're dealing with some pretty decent people here.
well, that's good to hear. Further comments, questions from the board? While they're thinking, I'll open it up to the public. Questions or comments from the public? Hearing none. We do have one. Go ahead. Please come forward and sit at the microphone. Or talk into the microphone. Identify yourself.
I'm Darlene Nelson, and I just wonder if these lots are actually large enough, because some campers are larger than the 20 by 40, lengthwise. So I'm wondering if you may need to consider some spots being larger.
Okay, that's good. That is the reason we went to 12 instead of 14. At 14, there was room to make them 20 by 40, is which the county said that was the minimum requirements, but we made them 25 by 40 because some of them do, like you say, some of them are larger. They have slides on both sides instead of just one side. Most all of them nowadays have slides on one side, but some of them do have slides on both sides. So we did go to 25 feet wide.
Our son-in-law and daughter had a 43-foot camper. Now that would not fit into your spaces.
Well, the gravel pads are 40 feet, but, and that's room for the front row on the setback, that's 40 feet. But in the back row, there's room all the way to that shed. I mean, it'll be solid gravel all the way to that shed. So if there's any longer ones, they'll have to go on the back row.
But again, you're talking about temporary and not permanent.
Correct.
So there's a difference. So, and we're all looking at temporary, correct?
Everything is temporary.
Yep.
Temporary. This is,
Okay.
when this construction project's over, this will be put back to its original state.
Okay.
So again, it'll be gravel, and then you're going to regrow grass, assuming this is not.
Yeah, I wanted my gravel out farther. You can see where the gravel is and square it up a little bit anyway. So where the front row of campers are, I'll push that gravel back, and that'll be all grass. But I think the parking area will be bigger. Where that second row is, I'll just, what gravel that we hauled in will be utilized there for parking lot.
Okay, no more questions from the audience. I'll close the public portion. And again, back to the board for further questions or comments.
Do you live on site?
Yes,
Is that your,
that's the house there. Yeah.
okay.
How far are your nearest neighbors?
Dwayne Oyen and Virginia Oyen are across the road and approximately quarter a mile to the west. They're the closest, and it was their family homestead that used to be this place. That's why I bought it from their mother. The next closest would be June Reed, which is to the east between myself and Ramlo Shores, and she's across the road also. Talked with both of them, and they're fine with it. The next closest neighbors would be a mile. Ramble Shores would probably be the next closest.
And you utilize garbage services, correct?
Yes. Yep, I've got that in there.
Yep.
All the state requirements is in the findings of facts. I'll
Okay.
go over those.
Yep. Other questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll go through the findings. Richard?
Application for a conditional use permit having been filed with the Brookings County Zoning Commission, acting as the Brookings County Board of Adjustment. Such application being attached here too. Application be made by Michael G. Glazier regarding the following real property: the south half of the southeast 1/4 of Section 17, Township 112 North, Range 47 West, Lake Hendricks Township. After due notice, a public hearing having been held on the application on the 20th day of June 2019. Number one, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment hereby finding that it is empowered to grant such a conditional use under the following sections of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. Article 11, Section 1101.01A Agricultural District. Conditional use number 20, home extended business. Further finding that the granting of the conditional use will not adversely affect the public interest. Number two, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment finding further finds and certifies that the following specific rules governing the conditional use request have been complied with. Number three, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment further finding that satisfactory provisions and arrangements have been made concerning the following where applicable. A, entrance and exits to the property will use proposed structures wherein with particular reference to automotive and pedestrian safety, convenience, traffic flow and control, and access in case of fire or catastrophe. Will use the existing driveway. B, off-street parking loading areas were required with particular attention to the items in A above and economic, noise, glare, or other effects. The special exception on the regarding adjoining properties and properties generally in the district. No on-street parking. D, utilities and refuge and service areas with reference to locations, availability, and compatibility. Dumpster service required. Screening and buffering with reference to type, dimension, and character, none stated. Signs, if any, proposed exterior lighting with reference to glare, traffic safety, economic compatibility, in harmony with properties in the same district. Could have a 16 square foot sign if you would like. Up to 16 square feet. Required yards and other open spaces, none stated. G, general compatibility with adjacent properties and other properties in the district. Comprehensive plan requirements met for the agricultural district. Number four, the Brookings County Board of Adjustment determines any conditions as conditional use upon the following special conditions or safeguards. Number one, South Dakota Department of Environmental Natural Resources septic system requirements. System to be pumped out on a regular schedule as required. Number two, South Dakota Department of Health requirements for a temporary campground. A, dumpster service required. Fire extinguisher on site, pest and rodent control. Number three, campground for use by construction workers in the area only, no recreational camping. Quiet time is 10 p.m. The infrastructure to be removed, the land returned to the original use when the conditional use expires. The Brookings County Board of Adjustment, by at least 2/3 vote of its full membership, hereby grants the above petitioner a conditional use for the above described real property as follows. Conditional use number 20, home extended business for temporary seasonal, spring, fall, and summer. Campground for construction workers only, no recreational camping. Conditional use permit is good for 3 years. It expires June 20th, 2022. This conditional use is specifically conditioned upon initial and continued compliance with all the requirements and conditions in 3 and 4 above and upon compliance with all applicable provisions of the Brookings County zoning ordinance. If approved, the Brookings County zoning director is authorized to issue any required building permits for construction consistent with the requirements of this conditional use permit. This conditional use permit is not used within 3 years of the date granted, it shall be invalid. Dated this 20th day of June 2019.
What about a 911?
It would have his address is what they would use.
Oh, okay. So then each one of your, I'm thinking of for safety issues, a 911 address would be yours, and then can you put a number in front of each
Each one will have a number.
slot will have a
Lot A,
number?
lot B,
Okay.
whatever.
Even black letter on the electrical box is usually how they do them on most campsites.
So it'll be large enough for emergency people to respond to be able to
I
see
think
that?
so.
Okay. Is there a requirement on the size of those numbers, Richard? Probably
They've got to
not.
be visible so far from the road, but this would be on private property away from the road.
Yeah,
So if he has them on a stake or a block out in front, would be adequate.
okay.
Like the 2-inch letters you can get at the hardware store, probably.
Okay.
So on here, do we have that 15?
Say, do you want to limit it to 15 spaces for right now?
I agree, it's kind of tight, but I think it's better than having 24, or whatever that was, 24, 25 sites. And again, if he wants to, he'd have to come back to us and see how things are going.
I'm just, I don't know, 15 or 24, why would it make a difference?
I was thinking a lot of crowding, seeing how things are going, kind of like what you had said
Oh, okay.
regarding things, and
What's the board think?
15's all the septic can currently handle, so
Okay.
oh yeah, and that was the other
That sounds
thing.
like pretty much a consensus of the board. You want to stick with 15 at this point? Okay, looks like a consensus. Then you'll have to come back if you want more. You'll know that ahead of time, I'm sure.
I'll agree to that.
Okay,
I'll have to put a septic tank in if I want more, so I'll come back.
further questions or comments on the findings?
That's the end of it.
Okay, if we're good with the findings, we'll go through the roll call.
Yelankowicz,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Kleinjohn,
Aye.
Ford,
aye.
Spence,
Aye.
Jensen,
Yes.
Erickson,
Aye.
and Rochelle.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is executive sessions, if necessary, but we don't have any need for an executive session, I don't believe. So, anyone have anything else? If not, we need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by McHugh, is there a second? Second by Ford. Meeting adjourned.